Hello, welcome back to Tale 3 Cabins. I've come back down here for the weekend. Today is Friday. Tomorrow is going to start a second gun week, Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, the weather's looking pretty good. Sunday, not so good. I came down here a day early, thought I'd get a few chores knocked out. One of them is we ran that trench back to the house over to this shed probably about a month and a half ago. And I have the wires just hanging out here in the conduit. And now I want to hang a box up here. I bought a circuit box that has two circuits in there. I have the one in there right now. And I will probably just hook in the old wiring directly into here and just get all the old stuff that I used to have. So a light, a couple outlets, and then an outlet on the outside. And then if I ever need to expand for anything, I can add another circuit here. One little caveat though is I've only ran 3 wires. They were 10 gauge wires that I ran to the shed here. So I have the ground, the neutral, and the hot. And normally if you have 2 circuits side by side, you need the 4 wires. But in the future, if I need to, I could probably just loop this top wire over to the second circuit and be okay with that. It's probably not code, but with this type of setup, it's not going to hurt anything. I'm a little ticked off. I bought this impact driver brand new during the Christmas sales at Home Depot. And it seems like the variable speed on the trigger is not working. It's either all or nothing. Now it's within the time frame for me just to return it to the store, but I already registered it online with the rigid lifetime warranty, so I just went through their website and I'm going to send it back, and then hopefully it won't be gone too long. I'm using this flexible conduit just to protect it from the mice. Once I get it into the larger conduit that we dug the trench for, I'm going to pack it with some steel wool so the mice don't get into there. So the wiring coming from the house is all hooked up, and then I quickly used some of the old wiring that I had, the outlets that were already existing and the light switches and everything, and just hooked that up really quick to the breaker. The shed was the easy part. I didn't have to fish any wires through. Everything was very accessible. But tomorrow, I'm going to try to spend most of the afternoon on this panel here. So I have to take the panel off. I'm going to have to fish the wire all the way down to the crawl space up to here and see if I can do that, because I don't really have a lot of tools or the proper tools. I don't have fish tape or anything like that. So Karen and I are going to try to do our best. I'm going to go down to the crawl space and we'll take care of that tomorrow. But I think for now, it's still a little bit nice outside, and I want to take care of some chores up on the hill, and then I want to show you something up there too. If you've watched my videos for a while now, you know when I go hunting that I usually have to stay in touch with the outside world. And out here in southern Ohio, we're in pretty much of a dead zone area where there's not very many decent cell signals. So when I come up here, I have a Verizon account, but there's no Verizon signal anymore. And I can get an AT&T signal, but again, I have a Verizon account on my cell phone. So I mentioned before that I use a SIM card that has AT&T minutes on it, and then I plug it into a SIM router. And I was showing you before that when I do this, I usually have like some solar panels that I set up on the roof, and then I have a portable power station that I use, plug it in, and that gets me a good 800 feet in diameter of, depending where I'm sitting out here, to give me a signal so I can keep in touch with the outside world. I have that rental property down in Tennessee, the vacation rental, and I'm also the HOA president. So every day there's something going on down there, and I pretty much need to be on call somewhat 24/7. So that's one of the reasons I can't really disconnect when I'm out here. But I wanted to show you something that it's not a portable power station type of deal, or somebody gives me something to review. But this is something that I did buy on my own. If you have power tools like Milwaukee or Rigid or Ryobi, and they all have their batteries, so most of them make an AC inverter that can hook up to your batteries. I happen to use Rigid all the time. I have all Rigid tools. I like the lifetime warranty part of it. So I pretty much just stayed in the Rigid world. Whenever I buy a new tool, I always make sure it's Rigid, and I have a ton of these batteries, and everything is supposedly a lifetime warranty. I've only had to test it once or twice. They did replace or repair the two issues that I had. But this is it right here. It basically just has a plug on it, and then you have some USB ports on the side, USB-C port. There's a small little light here, like a flashlight type of deal, and then you turn it on and off, and that's basically about it. So if I'm going deeper in the woods, a couple times I was carrying this around with me like a lunchbox. It's probably the smallest portable power station that I have. Still weighs a good 10 or 12 pounds though, and it's not very convenient when you're carrying a gun or a bow and all your other hunting gear. I really don't need a lot of wattage, so I can hook this up to a 2-amp battery, plug this into my SIM router, turn it on. You can hear a little startup fan. I have a power light that just showed up, and basically I can keep this in my bag. This is not too terribly large. I can keep this or maybe another spare battery in my bag, and I can get a cell signal. I'm getting 2 bars of AT&T right now off of this thing. So the drawback was, if I had the other setup here with the power station and the solar panels, I had to be somewhat close to my UTV. In fact, most of the time it was almost line of sight, and that kind of affects the way the deer act around here, depending on how close the UTV is. If I want to go deeper into the woods, I really can't, or I need another option where I was carrying that portable power station around. Where this is portable enough now to allow me to carry it, be much more portable. So this has a 2-amp battery. You can go up to a 3-amp battery, a 4-amp battery, or 8-amp battery. Just the larger the battery, the more time you're going to have depending on how much wattage you're drawing. So this inverter will give you 175 watts. And the one catch is that it's not a pure sine wave signal. It's a modified wave signal. I think you're fine when you're using something like this. So when it comes to a modified sine wave, you really don't want to use it with appliances that have compressors or motors in them. But I think like smaller electronics like this, you're okay because of the AC adapter. So essentially, when you think about it, you're going from a battery, this is an 18-volt battery, into an inverter that's going to convert it into AC. And then this is going to convert it back into DC and then go to your device. So if you're converting stuff back into DC, I don't think this modified sine wave matters too much. And then it made me start to wonder, because I use Apple products all the time, and I have an AC adapter in my truck. And I always have one of those little power blocks plugged into it with a little cord coming out of it, and I constantly use it to charge my phone and run an iPad or even laptops now and then. I wanted to see what kind of signal was coming out of that plug, and I tested it, and it was way worse than what was coming out of here. It was a modified sine wave also, and the volts was somewhere in the high 80s. It wasn't even reaching 110 volts. But I've been using that outlet for 8 years now and not have any issues using any of my electronic devices plugged into there, because I think these adapters will clean up that modified sine wave and make the correct output for your device. So I thought that was pretty cool. I just wanted to share that with you. If you have other batteries, you don't have to have Rigid. I looked it up, and there's a version for Milwaukee, there's a version for Ryobi, and there's even some versions on Amazon that have little adapters that you don't have to buy the Ryobi or the Milwaukee version. You could buy another version that's generic, that's a little bit cheaper. Now, one thing with the portable power station, they usually have a nice little readout on the front here, and it'll tell you how much power is coming in and how much is going out, how much time you got left. And there's really no readout, but technically there is, because my battery has a power gauge on the back here. So it is going to be able to tell you if it's full, 3/4, half, or getting close to empty. I have a couple Bluetooth compatible batteries from Rigid that I can actually use an app, and it'll actually tell me the percentage of the battery life left, how many times it's been charged, etc. So essentially I do have a method that tells me how much power is left and how much power is being drawn when I have this all hooked up with those Bluetooth type batteries for it. I believe the wattage that's coming out of the USB-C port is around 60 watts. It's not like a full 100 watts. When you're talking wattage with these things, it's pretty easy to figure out. So this battery is 2 amp hours, and it's an 18 volt battery. So if you multiply 2 times 18, that gives you 36 watt hours. So if you have an appliance that's 36 watts, that's what it takes to run it. It'll run that appliance for 1 hour. If you have some sort of device that's around 70 watts, it's only going to run that device for a half hour. Now this SIM card Wi-Fi router is very, very low wattage. It doesn't even register on my power station when it's drawing anything. So let's just assume that it's pulling 4 watts just for the heck of it. And this is 2 times 18, 36. So I could run this for 9 hours before this battery would need to be charged or before this would die. So I just thought I would share this with you. I thought it was kind of neat. It's going to make things a little bit simpler for me when I go hunting and want to think about still staying connected, but want to go into some deeper parts of the woods around here. It's lightweight. It might be a good option if you're going camping. And this is just my unique use for it. I'm sure you can think of many others, or you might have a unique use for it that just doesn't involve what I'm doing here. But you should be able to charge your cell phone maybe twice off of a 2 amp hour battery. You could charge your laptop almost once. If your laptop was completely dead, you could bring it back up to about 90%. You could charge your watch multiple times. So if you have a small, simple need and you don't want to pay a big expense for a portable power station, which is upwards of a couple $100 for this guy here, I was able to get this for right around $80 through Home Depot. We had Christmas specials going on. It came with a battery and it came with a charger. Sometimes you can buy just the device itself, but I thought it was a decent deal for $80 to get a battery, to get a charger, and this inverter at the same time. So it was a no-brainer for me for what I'm doing out here. I just thought I would share that with you. And again, I'll leave links below on the different types of batteries. Milwaukee, Ryobi, Craftsman. If you got Rigid, there is a device for all those, and I'll leave links to all of them and also the generic one too. I had a few hours left before sunset, so I brought my bow up when I came up here and sat up in a tree for a couple hours, but it was pretty uneventful most of the evening. Okay, so I spent an evening in the woods and I had this on the whole time. About 3 hours, and I'm just going to check my battery level here. It's slightly warm. Still got 3 bars left on the battery. So enough to last a morning and an evening hunt. It's the next morning about 6:45 a.m. and it's the start of the second gun week in Ohio. Again, it doesn't seem like much is happening here in the woods. I'm going to sit here till about 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then go down, and then we got some work to do this afternoon. The morning hunt wasn't very productive. Came back around 9:30 or 10 o'clock, had a little breakfast, and then we spent the rest of the morning and afternoon working on getting this wires from the crawl space up into the panel here that go to the shed. Wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. We took the panel off, and I started with just like a 12 gauge wire that was stiff and ran it down here into this hole. Tried to run it down into the crawl space, and I went down below. Karen was up here, kept fishing, nothing. Tried it in reverse, tried to go from the crawl space up to here. Same thing. We could sometimes see the wire, but it was just not making it up to the small little hole we needed it to come through. So then I got a stiffer piece of Romex. It was actually the underground Romex that I had some, and we tried using that because we thought it'd be less flexible than this. And again, we were fishing. She went down, I went up here. We reversed positions. I went back down, she came up here, and we just weren't getting nowhere. And I'm just thinking that we didn't have the right tools or the right amount of time to get this thing done, but I really did want to get power over to the shed and just kind of get things restored there. So as a last resort, I started thinking in my head, Karen had brought some sewing stuff, and I asked her if she had any spare string or thread, and she didn't really have any. And I thought, well, maybe if I get some thread and I lower it down into the excess hole, put a little weight on it like a sinker, see if maybe it'll go straight to the hole that I need to go to, and it's not going to move around down in there. It's just going to stay in the center. And I ended up using some dental floss, tied a pretty weighted screw to it, not too large but enough to act as a sinker. And I just started lowering in the hole, and I'm waiting for it to hit some kind of resistance or hit the bottom of the floor here, and I didn't feel anything. And I told Karen, I said, I think it went down to the crawl space. Sure enough, I went down there, and there it was. The screw was just levitating in the air. I tied it off, and we tied it to our wires up there. Eventually got it fished up to the top here. So we got the wire ran. We were back in business. I ended up putting the breaker on, getting this all hooked up here. So I used some of the spare conduit that I had left over when we dug the trench, used that underneath the crawl space to bring it closer to the panel, and then I used that flexible stuff that I was using in the shed to get up to here, just so no sharp edges would do any damage to the 10 gauge wire. Got a 30 amp breaker hooked up to it, so it's a 30 amp breaker here, 10 gauge wire going to the shed, and then it's 20 amp breakers inside the shed. I only have the one hooked up, but if I need to, I can hook up a second. All right, so it's Saturday afternoon of the bonus gun week. I didn't see anything this morning. Did a few odds and ends around the cabin earlier. And tomorrow looks like it's going to be raining all day, so I doubt I'll be hunting. So this will probably be it for gun this season. So there's still a muzzleloader that's coming up in the beginning of January. So if things do not work out this evening, still have one more shot at it. Typically, I got to say, in the history of me taking deer, I do about 33% of them are in bow season. Another 33% is probably in the opening gun week. Probably not the opening day, but sometime during gun week. And then the other 33% is usually in the muzzleloader. I've never really gotten anything on these bonus weekends like this, so we'll see what happens. But it's about 57 degrees out, so it's kind of warm. By the time I get out of here, it'll be down in the low 30s, so I'm dressed with some layers. But we'll see how the evening goes. Pretty peaceful afternoon, almost too peaceful. No deer in sight. That's going to do it for gun. We got a lot of rain coming in for tomorrow, so I don't anticipate going out at all. And I'll probably see you during muzzleloader. So that's going to do it for today. I appreciate you watching. Hope you enjoy and subscribe to these videos. Click on that little bell when you want to know when a new one's coming out. And keep an eye on us. Take care, everybody.